Hey guys, Tom here again from synthhacker.com. In this tutorial we're going to be making this sound from Louis the Child's remix of Oh Wonder. Really cool sound. This kind of remix that I based the sound on is actually from late 2014, I think. But it's just a really cool sound, and it's still kind of making these type of sounds really popular in like future bass and these kind of like flumy style tracks, I guess. And yeah, it's actually quite a simple sound, but hopefully the things that you kind of can learn from this and techniques you can then kind of do more advanced things with, like use more advanced wavetables, or maybe even implement like samples and stuff like that using the noise oscillator. There's a lot you can do with the sound, and we are going to be making it from scratch. And yeah, it's just a really cool template that you can kind of do your own thing with, I guess. But yeah, let's go ahead and initialize the preset. And then we'll begin making it from scratch. As always, guys, these videos are supported by my website over at synthhacker.com. Even if you haven't done so already, definitely go ahead and check out my presets for Serum. Really cool sounds. You know, really good, obviously, to use in tracks, and also to kind of learn from and reverse engineer as well. And yeah, thanks in advance if you decide to check that out. I really do appreciate it. And yeah, without further ado, let's begin making this Louis the Child Wobble synth. So the first thing to mention is that it's basically just a saw wave, which you can just leave as the default, or you can go to analog basic shapes and select saw wave from here. We are using 7 voices of unison that are all slightly detuned. This really just helps to kind of thicken the sound up a little bit, I find, and you can kind of adjust how much you want the voices to be detuned from one another to your own taste, really. Then next, let's go to the noise oscillator. This is kind of like a wobble sound that's going to be kind of implemented through the use of an LFO on the cutoff filter. So we're not going to hear much of the noise, because this is also going to be routed through the filter as well. But I find that it does help to kind of fill out the frequency range a little bit, and because like without it, it can sound like a little bit I don't know, like a little bit weak, especially given that these sounds are usually played in future bass tracks when not much else is playing. So you really want to kind of flesh out these sounds as much as possible and make them fill out as much of the frequency range as you can. And yeah, the noise I used was I think it was the J106 high pass. It's one of my favorite noise sources, because it is high pass, so it doesn't have much like muddy low end in it, which is really cool. I pushed the level of this up just a little bit, and I also pitched it up a little bit as well, just to kind of remove even more of the low end, really. And then next, going into the envelope section, I actually just left envelope 1 as it is, apart from I gave it like a little bit of release, because we do want it to have like this full sustain. But what I did do was, I mean, you can either do this one of two ways, but what you'll have noticed is when the kick hits, the wobble kind of like rises a little bit, like it doesn't play like straight away. There's a few ways that you can do this, and the way I did it was, first of all, by sidechaining the sound from the kick, using sidechain compression, and the other thing that I did was use a delay in the LFO shape, which was quite useful as well. Or if you like, you can increase the attack on the sustain to kind of give that effect. It's completely up to you, but I didn't do that for this sound. I just left it as it was. Moving into envelope 3, this was actually used as a modulation source in the sound for the cutoff filter, which I'll do in just a second. So let's go ahead and dive straight into the filter. I used a 4-pole 24 dB low pass filter. Make sure that oscillator A is being routed through this, or whichever oscillator you're using, and also make sure, like I said, that the noise oscillator is being routed through this as well. And then I just brought the cutoff frequency down like pretty low. And then what I did was, I noticed that the longer the sound was played in the track, the more kind of high frequencies you could hear in the sound. And the way that I achieved this was by using an envelope with quite a long decay, not decay, quite a long attack. I think I had it like about 1.7, something like that, and then I just made it a little bit more linear like that as well. And then what I did was simply drag and drop this on the cutoff of the filter. So what happens now is, as the sound plays, the cutoff frequency parameter opens up, and you kind of hear more high frequencies. But we're actually going to modulate this cutoff parameter with two sources. We're going to use this envelope, and then to give that kind of like wobble effect, we're also going to use an LFO as well, which I'll set up now. Now make sure first of all that you set this to trigger mode, so that every time you play a chord, it's going to sound the same. It's going to be triggered from the start of the LFO every time a note's played. That's pretty important. The rate and stuff like that, you can really just be as creative as you want. I didn't actually automate the rate in this sound because it didn't in the original track that Louis the Child did. I just left this at 1 tempo, and I actually used a triplet tempo, which is just a really cool rhythm. Like the triplet rhythms and dot rhythms are fun to play around with. So they kind of, I don't know, they're just kind of cool, and you know, rather than just sticking to the kind of quantized, I guess it is quantized, but you know what I mean, like the kind of straightforward rhythms. And then I definitely recommend playing around with like modulating or automating this parameter as well in your tracks. I know Flume does that a lot in his tracks, and it sounds really cool. So yeah, I set this to 1/16 triplets, and then what I also did was put a delay on this LFO. So essentially, at the start of the sound, when it first plays, the wobble's not going to be happening, which kind of lets the kick cut through a little bit, and it kind of gave it the delayed feel of the sound that the wobble chord did in the Louis the Child track as well. And then what you can do is drag and drop this on the cutoff parameter, like so. I think I had this around the similar amount as the envelope was modulating it, and now we've got this sound. Really cool. One thing that you can play around with a little bit is the resonance. I thought it sounded good around here, but you could push it even higher if you wanted. And this basically, just in case you don't know what resonance does, resonance essentially boosts the frequencies in like a bandwidth around wherever the cutoff parameter is put. So if we put this really high, for example, you can see that the frequencies around the cutoff point are kind of not attenuated, kind of boosted like that, as you can see. And then obviously because we're then moving the cutoff frequency with the LFO, it's going to have a really obvious effect. Really cool. It's got this kind of like liquidy sound, which is really cool for like the future bass and like chill trap stuff. Really cool. So next we're going to go into the effects section. I think that covers most of the stuff in the main section, and I actually only used one effect for this. I think I got to this point in the sound and it sounded really great, but it still didn't sound full enough to me. It wasn't kind of filling as much of the mix as I kind of wanted it to. And the first thing I tried doing was playing around with a hyperdimension effect and boosting the mix on this to kind of fatten it up a little bit. But what I found was the sound, when you're using the hyperdimension effect, it kind of lost its presence like right at the front of the mix, and it kind of got pushed back a little bit, which I didn't really like. So what I did instead was actually use a chorus, which is a really cool way to kind of like fatten a sound up in kind of like a subtle way. And the parameters I had this set to, I had like 2 delays that were set to the same point. I think it was like about 1.5 or something like that. Depth I had down to about 6 milliseconds. I boosted the feedback just a little bit, and I pushed the low pass filter up just a little bit on the chorus as well, just so it's kind of affecting more of the sound. And then because I just wanted this to be kind of subtle, I brought the mix down a bit, and I'll just kind of A/B. So this is without the chorus, and this is with. Hopefully you can hear. I mean, it depends on the sound system that you're using, but you know, I'm using a pair of Audi's headphones right now, and that to me is like a really obvious effect, which is it is doing the trick that I kind of wanted it to do, which was like filling the sound out a little bit more. And you can make this a bit more extreme by pushing the mix up. I'd be careful with pushing it too far though, because if you push it too far, it kind of has the effect of pushing it back in the mix, which you don't want. You want it to kind of stay present. And yeah, that pretty much covers the sound. I didn't actually put any reverb on this sound, because what you'll notice is a lot of these like chord wobbles in like Louis the Child tracks and like Flume and stuff like that, is that they're very, very up front in the mix, as I've already mentioned a couple of times. And if you put reverb on it, on a sound like this, it does kind of put it in a space, which is sometimes a good thing, but because these sounds are like on their own in the mix, I think they sound best when they're like really up front, and that's kind of the style that I was going for anyway. You know, it's completely up to you. But yeah, that pretty much covers everything, guys. Hopefully you got a lot out of this tutorial. It is quite a basic sound, but the sound honestly in the Louis the Child remix isn't that complicated either. A lot of kind of the newer tracks that he's been bringing out are a bit more complex, which I might tackle at some point. But honestly, a lot of their sounds sound like they're sample based as well, and using like real instruments and then using filter effects on them. So I don't know like if I can actually recreate a lot of those sounds, but I might give it a go. But hopefully you can kind of take these techniques and do your own thing with it anyway. That's kind of the goal of these tutorials, I think. And yeah, that's pretty much everything. Hopefully you liked this tutorial. If you did, please subscribe to stay up to date with new tutorials and leave a like. It really helps support me and the channel. If you have any questions about this sound or any other sounds or anything else, feel free to leave those down below. And yeah, I think that covers everything. If you haven't done so already, definitely go ahead and check out my website over at synthhacker.com to check out my presets for Serum. And yeah, that's all from me. Thanks a lot for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.